In metal typesetting, a font is a particular size, weight and style of a typeface. Each font was a matched set of type, one piece for each glyph, and a typeface comprised a range of fonts that shared an overall design. In modern usage, with the advent of digital typography, font is frequently synonymous with typeface, although the two terms do not necessarily mean the same thing. In particular, the use of vector, or outline, fonts means that different sizes of a typeface can be dynamically generated from one design. Each style may still be in a separate font file. For instance, the typeface Bulmer may include the fonts Bulmer Roman, Bulmer Italic, Bulmer Bold, and Bulmer Extended, but the term font might be applied either to one of these alone or to the whole typeface. Etymology. The word font derives from Middle French fonte, something that has been melted, a casting. The term refers to the process of casting metal type at a type foundry. Metal type. In a manual printing house, the word font would refer to a complete set of metal type that would be used to typeset an entire page. Unlike a digital typeface, it would not include a single definition of each character, but commonly used characters would have more physical type pieces included. A font when bought new would often be sold as 12 pt 14a 34a, meaning that it would be a size 12-point font containing 14 uppercase a/s and 34 lowercase a/s. Given the name upper and lowercase because of which case the metal type was located in, otherwise known as majuscule and minuscule. The rest of the characters would be provided in quantities appropriate for the distribution of letters in that language. Some metal type characters required in typesetting, such as dashes, spaces and line height spaces, were not part of a specific font, but were generic pieces which could be used with any font. Line spacing is still often called leading, because the strips used for line spacing were made of lead. The reason for this spacing strip being made from lead was because lead was a softer metal than the traditional forged metal type pieces and would compress more easily when locked up in the printing chase. In the 1880s-90s, hot lead typesetting was invented, in which type was cast as it was set, either piece by piece or in entire lines of type at one time. Font characteristics. In addition to the character height, when using the mechanical sense of the term, there are several characteristics which may distinguish fonts, though they would also depend on the script that the typeface supports. In European alphabetic scripts, i.e., Latin, Cyrillic and Greek, the main such properties are the stroke width, called weight, the style or angle and the character width. The regular or standard font is sometimes labeled Roman, both to distinguish it from bold or thin and from italic or oblique. The keyword for the default, regular case is often omitted for variance and never repeated, otherwise it would be Bulmer regular italic, Bulmer bold regular and even Bulmer regular regular. Roman can also refer to the language coverage of a font, acting as a shorthand for Western European. Different fonts of the same typeface may be used in the same work for various degrees of readability and emphasis, or in a specific design to make it be of more visual interest. Weight. The weight of a particular font is the thickness of the character outlines relative to their height. A typeface may come in fonts of many weights, from ultralight to extra bold or black. 4 to 6 weights are not unusual, and a few typefaces have as many as a dozen. Many typefaces for office, web and non-professional use come with just a normal and a bold weight which are linked together. If no bold weight is provided, many renderers support faking a bolder font by rendering the outline a second time at an offset, or just smearing it slightly at a diagonal angle. The base weight differs among typefaces. That means one normal font may appear bolder than some other normal font. For example, fonts intended to be used in posters are often quite bold by default, while fonts for long runs of text are rather light. Therefore, weight designations in font names may differ in regard to the actual absolute stroke weight or density of glyphs in the font. Attempts to systematize a range of weights led to a numerical classification first used by Adrian Frueger with the universe typeface. 35 extra light, 45 light, 55 medium or regular, 65 bold, 75 extra bold, 85 extra bold, 95 ultra bold or black. Deviants of these were the 6 series, e.g., 46 light italics etc., the 7 series, e.g., 57 medium condensed etc., and the 8 series, e.g., 68 bold condensed italics. From this brief numerical system it is easier to determine exactly what a font's characteristics are. For instance, Helvetica 67 translates to Helvetica bold condensed. The TrueType font format introduced a scale from 100 through 900, which is also used in CSS and OpenType, where 400 is regular. The first algorithmic description of fonts was perhaps made by Donald Knuth in his Metafont and text system of programs. There are many names used to describe the weight of a font in its name, differing among type foundries and designers, but their relative order is usually fixed, something like this: hairline, thin, ultralight, extra light, light, book, normal, regular, plain, medium, demi-bold, semi-bold, bold, extra, heavy, black, extra black, ultra. The terms normal, irregular and plain, sometimes also book, are being used for the standard weight font of a typeface, where both appear and differ. Book is often lighter than regular, but in some typefaces it is bolder. Before the arrival of computers, each weight had to be drawn manually. As a result, many older multi-weight families such as Gill Sans and Monotype Grotesque have considerable differences in styles from light to extra bold. Since the 1980s, it has become increasingly common to use automation to construct a range of weights as points along a trend, so-called multiple master font design. This means that many modern digital fonts such as Myriad and Thesans are offered in a large range of weights which offer a smooth and continuous transition from one weight to the next. Although some digital fonts are created with extensive manual corrections, as digital font design allows more variants to be created faster. An increasingly common development in professional font design is the use of so-called grades, slightly different weights intended for different types of paper and ink, or printing in a different region with different ambient temperature and humidity. For example, a thin design printed on book paper and a thicker design printed on high-gloss magazine paper may come out looking identical, since in the former case the ink will soak and spread out more. Grades are typically offered with characters having the same width on all grades, so that a change of printing materials does not affect copy fit. Grades are especially common on serif fonts with their finer details. Slope in European typefaces, especially Roman ones, a slanted style is used to emphasize important words. This is called italic type or oblique type. These designs normally slant to the right and left to right scripts. Oblique styles are often called italic, but differ from true italic styles. Italic styles are more flowing than the normal typeface, approaching a more handwritten, cursive style, possibly using ligatures more commonly or gaining swashes. Although rarely encountered, a typographic face may be accompanied by a matching calligraphic face, giving an exaggeratedly italic style. In many sans serif and some serif typefaces, especially in those with strokes of even thickness, the characters of the italic fonts are only slanted, which is often done algorithmically, without otherwise changing their appearance. Such oblique fonts are not true italics, because lowercase letter shapes do not change, but are often marketed as such. Fonts normally do not include both oblique and italic styles. The designer chooses to supply one or the other. Since italic styles clearly look different to regular styles, it is possible to have upright italic designs that take a more cursive form but remain upright. Computer Modern is an example of a font that offers this style. In Latin script countries, Upright italics are rare, but are sometimes used in mathematics or in complex documents where a section of text already in italics needs a double italic style to add emphasis to it. For example, the Cyrillic minuscule may look like a smaller form of its majuscule, or more like a Roman small m, as in its standard italic appearance. In this case, the distinction between styles is also a matter of local preference. In fruitage's nomenclature, the second digit for upright fonts is a 5, for italic fonts a 6, and for condensed italic fonts an 8. The two Japanese syllabaries, katakana and hiragana, are sometimes seen as two styles or typographic variants of each other, but usually are considered separate character sets, as a few of the characters have separate kanji origins. The Gothic style of the Roman script with broken letter forms, on the other hand, is usually considered a mere typographic variant. Cursive-only scripts such as Arabic will also have different styles, in this case for example Naskh and Kufic, although these often depend on application, area or era. There are other aspects that can differ among font styles, but more often these are considered immanent features of the typeface. These include the look of digits and the minuscules, which may be smaller versions of the capital letters, although the script has developed characteristic shapes for them. Some typefaces do not include separate glyphs for the cases at all, thereby abolishing the bicamerality, while most of these use uppercase characters only. Some labeled as unicase exist which choose either the majuscule or the minuscule glyph at a common height for both characters. Width. Some typefaces include fonts that vary the width of the characters, although this feature is usually rarer than weight or stroke. Narrower fonts are usually labeled compressed, condensed or narrow. In fruitage's system, the second digit of condensed fonts is a 7. Wider fonts may be called wide, extended or expanded. Both can be further classified by prepending extra, ultra or the like. These separate fonts have to be distinguished from techniques that alter the letter spacing to achieve narrower or smaller words, especially for justified text alignment. Most typefaces either have proportional or monospaced letter widths, if the script provides the possibility. There are, however, superfamilies covering both styles. Some fonts provide both proportional and fixed width digits, where the former usually coincide with lowercase text figures and the latter with uppercase lining figures. The width of a font will depend on its intended use. Times New Roman was designed with the goal of having small width, to fit more text into a newspaper. On the other hand, Palatino has large width to increase readability. Optical size. Some professional digital typefaces include fonts that are optimized for certain sizes. For instance, by using a thinner stroke weight if they are intended to be printed larger, or by using ink traps if they are to be printed at small size on poor quality paper. This was a natural feature in the metal type period for most typefaces, since each size would be cut separately and made to its own slightly different design. However, it declined in use as the pantograph. Phototypesetting and digital fonts made printing the same font at any size simpler. A revival has taken place in recent years as the range of competition in the font market has increased. Optical sizes are particularly common for serif fonts, since their finer detail will particularly need to be bulked up for smaller sizes and made less overpowering at larger ones. There are several naming schemes for such variant designs. One such scheme, invented and popularized by Adobe Systems, refers to the variant fonts by the applications those are typically used for, with the exact point sizes intended varying slightly by typeface. Pose are extremely large sizes, usually larger than 72-point. Display large sizes, typically 19 to 72 point. Subhead large text, typically about 14 to 18 point, usually left unnamed, typically about 10 to 13 point. Small text, typically about 8 to 10 point. Caption very small, typically about 6 to 8 point metrics. Font metrics refers to metadata consisting of numeric values relating to size and space in the font overall, or in its individual glyphs. Font-wide metrics include cap height, X height, ascender height, descender depth, and the font bounding box. Glyph-level metrics include the glyph bounding box, the advance width, and side bearings. Some fonts, especially those intended for professional use, are duplexed, made with multiple weights having the same character width so that changing from regular to bold or italic does not affect word wrap. Saband as originally designed was a notable example of this. Seraphs. Although most typefaces are characterized by their use of serifs, there are superfamilies that incorporate serif and sans serif or even intermediate slab serif or semi-serif fonts with the same base outlines. A more common font variant, especially of serif typefaces, is that of alternate capitals. They can have swashes to go with italic minuscules, or they can be of a flourish design for use as initials. Character variant typefaces may be made in variants for different uses. These may be issued as separate font files, or the different characters may be included in the same font file if the font is a modern format such as OpenType and the application used can support this. Alternative characters are often called stylistic alternates. These may be switched on to allow users more flexibility to customize the font to suit their needs. The practice is not new. In the 1930s, Gill Sans, a British design, was sold abroad with alternative characters to make it resemble fonts such as Futura, popular in other countries. While Bembo from the same period has two styles of one with a stretched-out leg for widely spaced all-caps text, one that blends better into body text. With modern digital fonts, it is possible to group related alternative characters into stylistic sets, which may be turned on and off together. For example, in William's Caslon text, a revival of the 18th century font Caslon, the default italic forms have many swashes matching the original design. For a more spare appearance, these can all be turned off at once by engaging stylistic set 4. Unicode, intended for academic publishing, uses SS15 to enable a variant form of E used in medieval Latin. A corporation commissioning a modified version of a commercial font for their own use, meanwhile, might request that their preferred alternates be set to default. It is traditional for fonts intended for use in books and school textbooks for young children to have simplified, single-story forms of the letters R and G. These may be called infant or schoolbook alternates. They are traditionally believed to be easier for children to read and less confusing as they resemble the forms used in handwriting. Numerals fonts can have different kinds of numbers, including, as described above, proportional and tabular as well as lining and text figures. They may also include separate styles for superscript and subscript digits. Professional fonts may include even more complex settings for typesetting numbers, such as numbers intended to match the height of small caps. In addition, some fonts such as Adobe's Acumen and Christian Schwarz's Neuhaus Grotesque Digitization offer two heights of lining figures, one slightly lower than cap height, intended to blend better into continuous text, and one at exactly the cap height to look better in combination with capitals for uses such as UK postcodes. With the OpenType format, it is possible to bundle all these into a single digital font file, but earlier font releases may have only one type per file. Subsetting. A typical font may contain hundreds or even thousands of glyphs, often representing characters from many different languages. Oftentimes, users may only need a small subset of the glyphs that are available to them. Subsetting is the process of removing unnecessary glyphs from a font file, usually with the goal of reducing file size. This is particularly important for web fonts, since reducing file size often means reducing page load time and server load. Alternatively, fonts may be issued in different files for different regions of the world, though with the spread of the OpenType format this is now increasingly uncommon.